Shalom, Israel. Now, my brother Edomite Slayer was talking about carbon dating, trying to explain to y'all how that system is inaccurate. Now, what you're looking at on the screen, some of y'all might be familiar with this object. It's called the Shroud of Turin. I think it's Turin, France, where they have this shroud. And it's supposed to be the Catholic Church. They reference this object as the burial shroud of so-called Jesus, right? Well, the thing about it is about 3.5 years ago, this is when I first got to know a little bit about carbon dating. When I was little, of course, when you little, you trust the textbooks. Grown people ain't gonna lie to you. So you think when you little. So you trust whatever they say. You trust they had isotope dating, they had carbon dating, they had all this type of so-called science. So you just trust it. And they'll tell you how old something is. So the thing with the Turin Shroud was, this was the first time that I had really just paid attention to the specifics of what they were saying. So the Turin Shroud, they was gonna carbon date it and see if it could have belonged to the 1st century AD. Now, aside from many other factors about the shroud, number one, it don't look like the people that live in Judea. It don't, you see what I'm saying? It don't, this one shroud, like this is the only nigga that could have, you know what I'm saying? Like he was the only guy that ever got crucified, or he's the only guy that ever had a burial shroud. Aside from all that, they was gonna test it and see. So when they tested it, it came out to like the Renaissance era. Say around the time from Leonardo to, Isabella and, Columbus and all them, Ferdinand, So obviously that's a hell of a lot later, a hell of a lot closer to this era than to the 1st century. So it couldn't have been, according to that test, it couldn't have belonged to no Jesus or nobody in the 1st century. So, but what they were saying was, one theory that they had was that Leonardo, because he was into a lot of art and science and things, he studied a lot. One theory that the people had is that he invented that, he created that shit. The shroud, he created it. It was just a piece of his artwork. But still, some people was like, it still could come from the 1st century. And they was like, the pollens, the grains that they use on the shroud are only found in the so-called Middle East. Now, but it tested, again, the carbon dating, it tested to what? 1,400 years after so-called Jesus. So, according to the test, it couldn't have been his. But what they said was that when you deal with carbon dating, the carbon dating, basically, to make it real simple, deals with measuring how much carbon is contained in the object. You tell how old it is by how much was there in the object, how much carbon the object contained in the beginning, which you just got to basically take a big ass guess. And then how much you think it will lose over a certain period of time. And that's how you tell how old it is, by how much is left in it in relation to how much was in it originally. So if something has a lot of carbon, the more it has, the younger it is. The less it has, the more time has passed and it's been losing carbon, the older it is. So, in other words, it tested out to be so young because there was a lot of carbon in it. So, but they mentioned that at one point in time, the shroud had been stored in this chest that was in a church, and it was in the attic of the church, and that church at one time had caught on fire. Of course, fire, flames, the smoke, that emits carbon. So the smoke and the flames and stuff, with the shroud being in the attic of that church that caught on fire, all this smoke and all these flames and stuff gets in, and more carbon is being deposited onto the shroud, right? So it tested out younger, a lot younger, if that was a shroud from anybody in the first century, Jesus or otherwise, than it could have been. So, and you talking about 1,400 years difference. So what that is, that's showing you a variable that can throw off these different systems of trying to date something, man. That is so unreliable. When I first heard that, I said, so that's what carbon dating is? While I was watching it, I said, that's how they do it? I said, you might well throw that shit in the garbage can. Just throw that whole concept in the garbage can, man. You see what I'm saying? So, basically, that's complete bullshit. You see what I'm saying? But again, this is the white man's system. And this is the shit that you Negroes trust. So, how can you be against the white man and telling us that we reading the white man's Bible, which we are not, yet you at the same time are doing what? Trusting all of the white man's so-called scientific concepts.